The bar smelled like cheap whiskey, burnt plasma circuits, and bad decisions. A standard night. Jonas Ralvek wiped down the counter, ignoring the murmured threats of a three-eyed thug who'd lost a bet and the exaggerated war stories of a veteran who'd probably never held a blaster. It was home, in the loosest sense of the word. The last stop wasn't the kind of place respectable people visited, mostly because respectable people didn't last long on Carthos 9. Tonight, though, something fell off. Jonas had survived too many close calls in his lifetime to ignore the itch at the base of his skull. The instinct that had kept him alive in war and worse told him he was being watched. Not in the casual, who's the new guy kind of way, but in the we're about to shoot you in the face kind of way. He casually glanced toward the back of the bar. A group of three sat at a booth, nursing drinks they clearly weren't interested in. Their posture was too stiff, their gazes too calculating. Professionals. Jonas had been a professional once. He recognized his own kind. The first one was human, tall, sharp-featured, the kind of man whose face you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. That was a talent in his line of work. The second was an Andarian, a reptilian species known for their patience, long-range marksmanship, and occasional tendency to eat their enemies. The third? A Zelthari, half-machine, half-nightmare, with glowing optic sensors that flickered every time he scanned the room. Yep, definitely assassins. Jonas sighed and poured himself a drink. If they wanted him dead, they'd do it soon. The last stop was one of the few places on Carthos 9 where bodies could hit the floor without causing much of a stir. The local authorities wouldn't investigate unless someone dragged a corpse onto their doorstep and filed the correct paperwork. Even then, there was no guarantee. Busy night? The question came from the Andarian. He spoke with a slow, measured cadence, his claws tapping idly against the table. Jonas raised an eyebrow. Busier now. The human chuckled. He's got a sense of humor. I like that. Jonas took a sip of his drink and set the glass down with deliberate slowness. If you're here to kill me, let's get on with it. Otherwise, I'd appreciate it if you ordered something that isn't just a prop for your intimidation routine. The three exchanged glances. The Zelthari cocked its head, optic sensors whirring. Analysis suggests he is either highly competent or very stupid. Little of both, Jonas admitted. The human assassin sighed, running a hand through his hair. See, this is the part where you're supposed to beg, or I don't know, at least look a little nervous. Sorry, Jonas said. Not much of a beggar. The Andarian leaned forward, his slitted pupils narrowing. Our employer wants you dead, Ralvek. Something about an old debt and loose ends. Old debts have a way of piling up. Jonas reached beneath the counter, fingers brushing against the handle of the shotgun he kept there. But I gotta say, sending 3 top-tier killers after a washed-up bartender? Overkill. The human assassin smiled. Well, in fairness, they only sent 2 of us. Zell here just wanted to see what would happen. The machine creature tilted its head. Conflict is stimulating. Jonas exhaled through his nose. He needed an out, but options were slim. The bar was too enclosed for a proper escape, and all 3 of them had their weapons within easy reach. If he moved first, he might take down 1, maybe 2, but the third would finish the job. Then the lights flickered. For half a second, the bar plunged into darkness. A low hum of disrupted power coursed through the walls, and something shifted in the shadows. The Zelthari tensed, optics scanning wildly. Anomalous presence detected. Jonas frowned. That wasn't part of his plan. The Andarian was already moving, reaching for his sidearm, when a growl rumbled through the room. Not a normal growl. This was deeper, raw, vibrating through the air like a sonic tremor. The human assassin's bravado evaporated in an instant. What the hell was that? Jonas knew. Oh, he really wished he didn't, but he knew. A shadow darted across the room, fast as a plasma round. 1 second the Andarian was there, gun half raised. Then he was gone, dragged into the darkness with a strangled yelp. Silence. Then the screaming started. It was wet, messy. The kind of sound a man only makes when he realizes, too late, that he's been reduced from apex predator to prey. Something crunched. Then nothing. The remaining assassins stood frozen, every muscle coiled like a steel spring. Jonas, still behind the counter, debated the ethics of pouring himself another drink while this all played out. The Zelthari's optics whirred in rapid succession. Thermal readings indicate. Another growl. Closer this time. The human assassin backed up slowly, reaching for something on his belt. Look, Ralvek, whatever this is, we can call it a draw. Walk away, live to. A figure stepped into the dim light. Bare feet, shredded clothes, glowing golden eyes. Jonas felt the usual mix of pride and dread settle in his chest. Kai, he said carefully, you really need to work on your entrances. His son, who, until about 2 minutes ago, had presumably been asleep upstairs, tilted his head. There was still a lingering wildness in his gaze, an unsettling sharpness in his teeth. Couldn't sleep, Kai muttered, voice rough. Figured I'd come down for a drink. The human assassin pulled his blaster. I don't know what you are, but... Kai moved. Jonas barely saw it. One moment his son was standing there, all lean muscle and feral energy. The next he was on the assassin, knocking the blaster aside like a toy. There was a brief struggle. Brief in the sense that Kai made a very deliberate choice not to rip the man's throat out. The Zelthari took a calculated step backward. Retreat is advisable. Jonas rubbed his temples. You think? The mechanical assassin wasted no time. It turned and bolted for the exit, shoving past tables and patrons in a way that suggested self-preservation had officially overruled its enthusiasm for stimulating conflict. The human, still pinned beneath Kai, managed a weak laugh. SOA, I'm guessing we're not getting paid. Jonas sighed. That depends. How fast can you run? The assassin took the hint and scrambled to his feet. Jonas didn't try to stop him. No point. The message had been sent loud and clear. The next time someone came for Jonas Ralvek, they'd really need to do their research. Because his kid was worse. The human assassin ran. It was a good choice. Not the bravest, not the most professional, but certainly the smartest. His boots skidded across the bar's grimy floor as he scrambled toward the exit, hands fumbling for a weapon, a plan, anything that might get him out alive. Kai exhaled through his nose, watching him go. Should I stop him? He asked, voice still edged with something raw, something not entirely human. Jonas took a long, deliberate moment to consider this. Then he shrugged. Let him spread the word. Might cut down on future interruptions. Kai let out a low, displeased huff, like a predator robbed of its final kill. His bare feet made no sound against the floor as he stepped out of the dim lighting, muscles still coiled tight with leftover aggression. He wasn't as far gone as Jonas had seen him before, not completely lost in the shift, but the signs were still there. Golden eyes too bright. Fingernails slightly too sharp. A tension in his shoulders, as if his body hadn't quite decided whether it was done with the fight. Jonas grabbed a mostly clean rag and started wiping the counter. So, you want to talk about it? Kai's jaw clenched. Not really. Jonas nodded, tossed the rag aside, and poured 2 drinks. One for himself, one for Kai. He slid the glass across the counter. Then let's drink about it. Kai stared at the amber liquid for a long second. Then he downed it in one go. Okay, first of all, Jonas said, pointing a finger that was supposed to be a sip. Kai winced as the alcohol burned its way down. Tasted terrible. Jonas took a sip of his own. It's whiskey, not space juice. You're supposed to appreciate the suffering. Kai rolled his eyes but said nothing. For a while, the only sounds in the bar were the distant hum of flickering neon signs and the occasional drip of something leaking. Hopefully just a broken pipe, but with the state of this place, it could just as easily be blood. Jonas let the silence stretch between them. Kai would talk when he was ready. He always did. Eventually, the kid slumped onto a stool, rubbing at his temples. I almost lost it again. Jonas didn't reply right away. He just leaned against the counter, studying his son's face. You didn't, though, he finally said. Yeah, but I almost did. Kai's fingers curled into fists. And next time? What if I don't pull back in time? What if I? Jonas cut him off with a raised hand. Nope, not doing that. No spiraling. Bad enough I gotta clean up this mess, he said, gesturing toward the wreckage of tables and chairs. I don't need you having an existential crisis on top of it. Kai scowled, but some of the tension drained from his shoulders. Not my fault your bar is flimsy. Not your fault? Kid, you threw a grown man through a reinforced table like it was made of wet cardboard. Kai glanced at the shattered remains of said table. Should have reinforced it better. Jonas snorted. I'll be sure to let the furniture know it needs to try harder. That almost got a smile. Almost. Kai exhaled slowly, rubbing his hands together, watching as his fingernails shortened, returning to something more human. His control was getting better. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Do you ever wonder, Kai said quietly, if there's a way to stop this? To make it go away? Jonas felt the question like a knife between the ribs. He'd asked himself the same thing too many times to count. Honestly, I don't know, he admitted. We could find some fancy scientist to poke around your DNA, but odds are you'd either end up in a lab for the rest of your life or with extra limbs in places you really don't want them. Kai grimaced. Pass. Exactly. Besides, we don't even know what caused it in the first place. You were born healthy. Normal. It wasn't until you hit 13 that things got hairy. Jonas smirked. Literally, Kai groaned. You're the worst. Jonas took another sip of whiskey. Proudly, another silence settled between them, more comfortable this time. Then Kai straightened, suddenly alert. His head snapped toward the door. Jonas tensed. He knew that look. What? Kai's nostrils flared slightly. The Zelthery. It didn't leave. Jonas frowned. You sure? Kai gave him a dry look. You want to double-check with your superior human senses? All right, point taken. Jonas grabbed his shotgun from behind the bar. If it's still lurking, we deal with it. Kai nodded. Alive or dead? Jonas hesitated. Let's start with alive and see how it behaves. The front door was slightly ajar, a thin sliver of neon light bleeding in from the streets. Kai moved first, silent as a shadow, slipping out into the night. Jonas followed at a more reasonable, middle-aged man pace. The alley behind the bar was empty at first glance. Then movement. A figure crouched by the far wall, optic sensors dimmed to a faint glow. The Zelthery assassin. It didn't run, didn't attack, just watched. Jonas raised his shotgun. I'm really hoping you've got a good reason for still being here. The Zelthery's head tilted, gears whirring. Observing, Kai narrowed his eyes. Observing what? The machine didn't answer right away. Then, in a tone that almost sounded intrigued, it said, You are different. Kai stiffened. No kidding. The Zelthery hummed, its optics flickering. I have seen enhanced warriors. Genetic experiments. Cybernetic monsters. But you are natural. Jonas didn't like where this was going. Yeah, well, take a picture, pal, because you're not getting a second look. The Zelthery rose to its full height, a ripple of shifting metal. The Syndicate will come for you again. Stronger assassins. Greater numbers. They will not stop. Jonas already knew that, but hearing it confirmed was still annoying. Fantastic, he muttered. I love repeat customers. Kai, though, was watching the Zelthery carefully. You're warning us? The machine hesitated. Then, I'm curious. Jonas sighed. Great. We've got a creepy murder bot with an interest in biology. Exactly what my life was missing. The Zelthery took a slow step back. Survive the next attempt, and perhaps we will speak again. Then, with a quiet hum of shifting parts, it vanished into the night. Jonas let out a breath. That wasn't ominous at all. Kai glanced at him. We need to leave. Jonas nodded. Yeah, but not tonight. He clapped his son on the shoulder. Come on, kid. Let's go rebuild our terrible life choices before someone else tries to murder us. Kai huffed a laugh. Sure, but I'm not fixing your tables. Jonas grinned. Smartest thing you've said all night. Jonas sat at the ruined bar, staring at the mess. There was something poetic about it, really. A metaphor for his life. Years of effort reduced to splinters, blood stains, and the distinct smell of burned upholstery. Kai, ever the optimist, walked in, surveyed the damage, and let out a low whistle. So, you think we can buff this out? Jonas pinched the bridge of his nose. Kid, we need divine intervention to fix this. He gestured vaguely at the cracked walls, overturned tables, and the suspiciously claw-shaped gouges in the floor. I don't even remember installing carpet, but somehow it's ruined too. Kai shrugged. Well, in my defense, I was technically saving your life, right? Next time, save my life less destructively. Jonas poured himself another drink. He'd had enough for the night, but considering his bar now looked like a crime scene, he figured an extra glass wouldn't hurt. You know, I like this place. Kai raised an eyebrow. You complained about it daily. Yeah, well, that's how you know I cared. Jonas swirled the whiskey in his glass, staring into it like it held answers. It didn't. It never did. Kai pulled out a stool, one of the few still standing, and sat beside him. So, what's the plan? Jonas sighed. He hated plans. Plans had a way of falling apart, usually at the worst possible moment. But there was no avoiding it. We can't stay. Not after tonight. Kai nodded. He'd known that the second the Zelthari had spoken, the assassins would be back, and next time, they wouldn't send a scouting party. They'd send an army. Jonas ran a hand through his graying hair. We need to leave Carthos 9 before dawn. Get ahead of this before the Syndicate makes our faces the hottest bounty in the sector. Kai snorted. You say that like your face isn't already famous. Hey, some people find this face charming. Name one. Jonas opened his mouth, thought about it, then scowled. Irrelevant. Kai smirked, but didn't push it. All right, so where are we going? Jonas frowned, drumming his fingers against the counter. I know a guy, sort of an old friend, sort of an ex-business partner, mostly a headache. Kai gave him a long look. You mean Rilo? Don't you? Jonas winced. Unfortunately, Rilo hates you. Rilo mildly dislikes me, Jonas corrected. And for the record, it was his idea to bet his ship in a poker game, not mine. Kai folded his arms. You cheated? Jonas waved a dismissive hand. I creatively interpreted the rules. Kai shook his head. And you wonder why people keep trying to kill you? Jonas pointed at him. Hey, they try to kill you too, remember? Welcome to the club. Kai rolled his eyes. Fantastic. Do I get a membership card? Jonas took a slow sip of his drink. Kid, we've both had our membership cards for years. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of reality settling in. Jonas had always known his past would catch up to him eventually. He just hoped it wouldn't involve quite so much property damage. Then Kai shifted, expression turning serious. Jonas, be honest. You think this is about you? Jonas set his glass down. What do you mean? Kai met his gaze, golden eyes sharp. The Syndicate's good. They don't waste resources. 3 assassins for an old soldier-turned-bartender? Sure, maybe. But now they know about me. Jonas' stomach twisted. Kai continued, voice steady. The Zelthari said it himself. They're coming back. But not just for you. For me. Jonas hated how right he was. The Syndicate didn't take chances. If they thought Kai was a threat, or worse, an opportunity, they wouldn't just send killers. They'd send scientists, bounty hunters, warlords who saw value in the thing inside Kai. The thing neither of them fully understood. Jonas set his glass aside and straightened. Then we don't just run. We make sure they never get their hands on you. Kai exhaled slowly. That's going to be a hell of a trick. Jonas smirked. Kid, tricks are what I do best. Kai rolled his eyes. Right? And how's that been working out for you? Jonas gestured to the rec bar. Flawlessly. Kai laughed, shaking his head. Then something outside caught his attention. A flicker of movement in the neon glow of the street. Jonas noticed it too. His hand drifted toward his shotgun. Friend of yours? Kai sniffed the air. His lips pulled back slightly, not quite a snarl, but close. Not even close. Jonas didn't hesitate. He stood, grabbing a bag from behind the counter. He'd always kept it there, packed, ready for the inevitable day when trouble came knocking too hard. That day had officially arrived. He tossed another bag to Kai. Time ago. Kai caught it easily. I call pilot seat. Jonas scoffed. Not a chance in hell. They slipped out the back door, just as a shadow moved past the bar's front window. More assassins? Syndicate scouts? Jonas didn't care to find out. The last stop had served him well. But bars could be rebuilt. His son? He wasn't about to lose him. They disappeared into the night, neon lights flickering behind them, a storm brewing in their wake.